Dear Guru Crowder, audio Wade, Gerald, and Quarter Black.
Hey.
In parentheses, though. I'm not even sure what that means.
I don't know. I know exactly what it means.
I don't.
It might as well be a less
keep
than
going.
symbol.
I don't know what that is, sir. I lost my dad at a fairly young age. I was 20. My dad was 50. Talking to him has always given me peace. Is that a bad thing? To him is in quotes. I'm not sure what that means. He is the best friend I ever had. Is there a chance you all can really expand on the spiritual aspect of things? My father was cremated, unfortunately. That's a totally different family issue, but his ashes stay on my nightstand. I am nearing 30, have 3 children, and nobody seems to be able to accept, acknowledge, or be able to help me move on during my darkest days. I often feel like I'm dying without him to be with him. P.S. Give Betty cheese, please.
Oh,
that happens.
Betty
that
doesn't love the cheese
happens.
as much as Hopper.
And she's also learned a lot.
Thank you very much.
I think as well. So anyway, that's tough when you lose a parent.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's
yeah,
really tough.
absolutely. It's a really difficult process. I think it's been almost a decade since that, based on some of the stuff that I saw in the letter that I didn't read. I think it's almost about a decade since that happened. I don't know that you ever fully recover, but you obviously move closer and closer to getting some kind of normal, maybe a little bit of a new normal. As far as talking to your dad, as though he's still present and in the room, there are a lot of times where I think that can be very helpful to think like that. But then I also think that there are some times where that can be somewhat detrimental. It keeps you focused on maybe the past a little bit more and not really living in the present and being as present of a parent. You have 3 children, right? To be, you are that person to them, only in the mother role. Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes it can be a little bit detrimental to hang on to those things. There's a period of mourning that we have to go through, and a period at which we kind of have to move on. And that's where you get a lot of that healing from, when you move on into the normal things of life without forgetting the past and without rejecting it, but putting it in its proper place and saying, I'm honoring the memory of this person. I remember them fondly. I think about them, and when I do, it's good memories. But I'm also sowing into the now. I'm sowing into my children and the situations that I'm in and the friendships that I have. So if it ever gets in the way of that and keeps you from moving on, especially you said you have some really, really dark times, I think it would be helpful to continue through the rest of the process and not stay where you are in the process. But that's just my take on it.
Well, it depends. Talking to him as though he's still. I want to be clear as far as the spiritual side to expand. Your dad can't hear you.
Right.
I don't know if anyone here disagrees with me on that. Spiritually,
I don't. What do you think, Wade?
I don't think he's busy listening to every word you're saying. No.
I don't know that there's any scripture that tells me that people that we are family members with can hear and see what's going on in our lives. Right, I don't believe that that's true.
And there's a lot that,
but I had to think about it for a second.
There's a lot that would say otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I know they can't come back like in a spiritual way. You can't call them back. You can't communicate with the dead or anything like that. Well, as far as like what kind of view you have from the mezzanine up there on what's going on down here, I have no idea. But I'm assuming it's not that your focus is on earth. You're in heaven.
Yeah,
that's a great focus to have up there.
I don't. Yeah. As far as from a spiritual basis, I see a lot to not only suggest but flat out tell you as a Christian that you cannot communicate with anyone who is dead. Period. And as a matter of fact, I see a lot of prescriptions that are pretty clear. Don't do that. Right. Yeah. It doesn't say don't do that except for a dead relative. It says don't do that.
Period.
Period.
Don't do that.
And here's what I will say, though. A lot of people say that, and I'm like, oh, man, and it hurts them. Let me be really clear. Do you really think, and this is, I understand where you're coming from to a degree. I still have both my parents, but I watched my mom lose both of her parents in the span of a year. And I was very close. So to give you an idea, actually, I grew up so close to my grandfather. It's actually not as far from the back of this building to the front of this building right here where I grew up from my grandfather.
Yeah.
So I stayed there all the time. I was with my grandfather. He was, when people say a second father, I don't think there would have been more than 2 days that went by that I didn't see my grandfather for significant amounts of time every day. He was my favorite person. So, not the same thing. That being said, I do think there's a component of this. Listen, you have children. You want them to feel this longingly about you when you go away. You need to focus on your children. You need to move on for your children. You need to move on for your husband. You need to move on for your family. And when you remove and I say this respectfully, the selfish part of the equation, it's a good thing that your dad can't hear you. Sweetheart, I mean that. It's a good thing. You don't want your dad looking down right now and seeing you in this much pain. What could possibly be more torturous for your dead father than looking down and seeing you miserable, unable to do anything because he can't communicate with you?
Right.
It may make you feel better, but that would be horrible. That would be like ripping the heart out of your dad's chest. So thank Christ, and I mean thank Christ, in that he is very clear that you cannot communicate to the dead, and that when you get to heaven, you are not longing for anything of this world. And here's the thing, that's a good thing, because that's a good thing that that's the case, because guess what? As soon as your dad crossed over through those pearly gates, whether figurative or literal, if he were to long for anything of this world, it would be you, because I'm sure that he loved you just like you love him, but he doesn't. Right now, he is completely fulfilled and at peace, which I know is much harder for you, but it's not hard for your dad.
Yeah.
So spiritually, your dad can't hear you. Your dad is not, and thank God your dad is not having all of this sort of offloaded onto him, all of your emotions, because you're still dealing with the fleshly pain and the earthly concerns and desires and turmoil that really he's long since left behind something else too. There's a strong case to be made, and I had a pastor talk about this. I don't have the verses in front of me. In heaven, there isn't the same concept of time that we have here.
Correct.
So as far as your dad is concerned, you're walking through those gates at the same time.
Yeah, together.
Yeah.
So
there's a very strong case for
Yeah, on a spiritual basis, I feel it's one of those things where people. Listen, I know I'm going to sound like a hippie, but open your mind. They go, but wouldn't my dad, I love my dad so much. Wouldn't God want me to be able to talk to my dead grandfather, my dead father? Hold on a second. You're trying to put this in a three-dimensional realm where we have a God who is past, present, future, Alpha and Omega. You don't understand what heaven is. You don't know how many dimensions there are. And you are trying to put this into a box that would be most pleasant for you. Now there are new boxes that you could have never even imagined before. I guarantee you that he is better off than you could ever possibly compute, and that doesn't include in the equation, as far as what we believe biblically, the ability to communicate with you. It's not a part of the equation. The equation is far better than you're giving it credit for. So this is a lot more difficult for you than it is for him, and so I think the best thing that you can do is, like you said, take the proper steps to moving on and start focusing on other people first. It sounds to me like you're a great mom, that you care about your kids. That it sounds to me like you have a great family. I mean, I would imagine that if your dad were here, that would be really important for him, for you to continue with that, not reaching out to him. He can't hear you.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, your dad would probably want that for you.
Yeah.
Right. Whenever your parents leave this earth, they want you to be able to function and to have a wonderful, joy-filled life with your family, or whatever the situation may be with you. And so use that as motivation. Like, well, what would my dad want me to do right now? Would he want me to be thinking about the past and living in pain from this situation? Or would he want me to remember the good things about the time that we had together and move forward and take some of the lessons that I learned and create a legacy that reflects on him as well as me?
Yeah.
I think you're right. And it's super hard. I mean, in those types of situations, especially at a young age that this person lost, I'm not super young, but young enough.
Yeah.
Pretty early. It's tough, but the best thing that you can do is to understand, that's the goal. The goal of being a parent is to raise a child that can live on their own and have a good life, hopefully a life that is better than yours. And that's what your dad would want you to do.
And this is one thing I will say that, this is just me going off my own personal rant, so I appreciate you sending the email. This doesn't necessarily have to do with you, but it kind of is a narcissistic view of heaven. When people say I know my dad, or I know my aunt, or I know my son is smiling down on me. That's a pretty crappy heaven, especially considering that this is supposed to be very temporary. By the way, this is but a moment when you think about eternity. This is very much second tier to what goes on there as far as your lifespan, as far as all of eternity, right? So we're going to be designing from the ground up for heaven to be right. Here, right now, this is fall, and people have made all kinds of mistakes, and obviously we understand what the end of the world we don't understand fully what the end of the world will look like, but we understand there will be an end of the world, and there will be a final day of judgment. But the point is, to think that heaven was created for this very temporary space known as Earth, for people just to sit there and be like, what's going on down there?
Yeah, like an aquarium.
They don't care.
Yeah.
If anything, we can't, but we should be concerned with what's going on up there a whole lot more than they could care about what's going on down here.
Yeah. It would be very bad to have a view from heaven to see all the pain on earth.
Yeah. That's like thinking the headliner should be watching every single warm-up act. No.
Yeah, it's exactly,
They sit in the back, do
it's exactly
blow,
what I
and
was
then get
thinking.
on stage.
Yeah. Oh,